Welcome to Book Club for Movies, everybody, for the week of July 11th. It's a special day.
It is.
For people.
Happy birthday to somebody.
I'm Ryan Miller. Thank you. And the Fearless Hyena himself is Matt Amberg.
Rawr.
Did you just eat? The audio didn't come through, but the visual of you eating, which is going to make sense still to some people when they hear that, but sense to more people that have seen the movie. But yes, Matt Amberg is eating.
I can't stop it.
Isn't it great? Really?
No, I love it, and it's definitely a health issue. it's welcome to Julykwondo.
Thank you. Yeah, so big news here. I'm coming around on Julykwondo. I feel like, I don't know how you felt, but I've been reluctant maybe to fully embrace it because I'm like, I don't know. It's just, maybe it's too dumb. And then this year, finally, I'm like, yeah, you're giving me the look that I gave myself when I realized that we came up with Book Club for Movies. So Julykwondo, everybody, is back this year for the second time in a row. We do Octoberween also, for that matter.
That's right.
We might even do Noirvember this year.
I'm looking forward to it.
So we're going to stick with Julykwondo, and the
That's
hashtag wasn't taken. So either way.
Boom!
This year with, honestly, of the 2 years we've done it, the most exciting slate of movies that I think I could have chosen.
I am excited, especially based off this first title here that we're going through today. I had never seen it, never heard of it, and it was a roller coaster, I gotta say.
Same. All of the above, actually. But before we get too far down that road, Matt, you actually had some questions that I thought might serve as a fun little introduction or primer to what we do during Julykwondo, which the short story is, I think it was born out of me thinking I hadn't seen a lot of Jackie Chan movies that I should have seen. And then that led to me formulating this big old long list. You can find it on Letterboxd of like all of these Kung Fu movies that I haven't seen, which led to me kind of going through the history, which led to me. So we've come to a point where I feel like
we're pulling on threads here.
Yes.
It's a big one.
If it's done well, this is all perfectly coming together in a month of fantastic action movies. But
that's right.
Also, it's been super interesting just to go through and learn. I mean, I'm a history nerd. It's the degree I don't talk about.
Yeah. Thankfully.
So I've always been interested, not even just when it comes to film, obviously, but just in the history of things. And this has been no exception. I do want to start out with the standard caveat, though, the standard apology up front. We're going to get a lot of the names wrong.
Big time.
We'll go to the trouble of trying not to, but it's not going to help. So I just wanted to say, Doibuchi, which is sorry in Chinese, if that came out correctly, which if it didn't, perfect either way.
Nice work, Guilo.
So first up, Matt, your questions. You remember your questions, by the way?
No, not at all. I asked them when they were fresh in my mind.
Okay.
Not even supposed to be questions for me, just things for you to answer for everybody.
Oh, yeah. You led with that, too. You're like, questions, and then you listed them out and was like, you don't need to answer those. So I was like, wait, well, maybe I do it on air, quote unquote, and we see how it goes. So the first question you had was, I think, is also one that I think a lot of people have, which is why I think this is going to be useful either way, is what is wuxia? And another word I might not be saying correctly, which there's like a 5-minute, which doesn't sound long, but for how to pronounce one word is pretty long.
That's a long video.
YouTube video out there about how to pronounce wuxia. And I think I'm not doing it perfectly still, but he's kind enough to point out a middle ground where if you want to just say it, you can say it. So I'm going to say wuxia from here on out.
That's how I say it.
In answer to your question, broadly speaking, it's a branch of Chinese fiction featuring martial arts. So not just movies, right? Books go back forever. Written goes back much farther than film.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I feel like film came first, then somebody was like, let's write a script next time.
In some cases it did. Novelization of The Rocketeer, pretty good. One of my favorite books when I was a kid.
Well, there we go. Everybody go read and watch The Rocketeer.
Well, number one, yeah. So it goes back a big, long while, and I guess the two pieces to it are literally Wu and Xia, which Xia is a code of sorts, kind of like Bushido in Japan. And Wu, how is it, swordsman or something like that? I can't remember. Oh, by the way, my son's in the room for this go around. My wife and daughter have taken a trip. What can I help you with?
I love you.
I love you too.
That's great.
Okay, go ahead and have a seat. My son, everybody, we'll see if he's got an iPad full of music, so we'll see how this goes. Yes, wuxia, and I guess more specifically, 20th century wuxia tends to break with Confucian values more, blah, blah, blah. Either way, you're going to see usually ancient China. You're going to see a martial artist of some sort, and he's going to need to overcome some sort of tragedy, rejection, mystery, and there's usually some sort of supernatural element to it, which my son agrees with.
Yeah, which is okay. So that's usually where that's how I understood it to have.
Jiving, yeah,
like,
okay.
Yeah, well, and I just wanted a little clarification because like Shang-Chi.
Well, so some of the confusion that you're going to run into is that Chinese martial arts also goes by the name of wushu.
Right.
So sometimes they'll say it's a wushu film, meaning it's a Chinese martial arts film, and they're correct. But to be wuxia, I feel like more often than not, we're talking about, like I said, ancient China. And okay, so especially when it comes to film, there's a break. There's kind of a new wave of wuxia that happened around the 60s, which I feel like is where we're going to start getting into what we're actually talking about this week. Because even with movies, 1930, one of the earliest examples I could find of a wuxia film from the 30s is also probably my favorite title of a wuxia film, Woman Warrior of the Wild River 6, Rumble at Deerhorn Gully.
That is one hell of a title.
It goes places, yeah, 1930s.
Fantastic.
But I guess what happened is that there was enough opposition from both straight up the government and people in power, however that goes, to wuxia as a form of fiction, because it deals also with a lot of political upheavals. Kung Fu would also follow some of this. It comes to be kind of the power of the people and stuff like that. But it became enough of an issue that the film version of wuxia was driven to Hong Kong, where it was a British colony. So they had a little bit more leeway, strangely enough.
Okay.
And then we get to basically where we're going, where kind of a new wave of wuxia started to flood in that had more kung fu. And I think the movies that we talk about most often, or that I talk about most often when we say wuxia, are those King Hu movies, which I've talked about.
Right.
Come Drink with Me, Dragon Inn, A Touch of Zen, which I think you just got. I think that's on your list.
Yeah, we're gonna watch A Touch of Zen.
Okay, yeah, that's one of my big recommendations too from that era. If you want one that's pretty representative, so we get a bit more fighting choreography. We get some wire work, some trampolines, and then
trampolines. You mean those guys aren't really jumping like that?
It's the total Crouching Tiger thing too. Like that is the other movie I also always come to mention. But also, that movie, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, was the first time in 2000 or whatever it was that Hollywood actually tried a wuxia film.
Yeah.
In 2000,
right?
Like we're talking about obviously since the 30s here. So yeah, basically once all that started happening, the King Hu stuff is when kind of this new wave comes about and Kung Fu pretty much takes over. And that's probably a break. Obviously it's not a hard break. You will find a lot of Kung Fu films in the movie we're going to talk about today, Fearless Hyena. You will see some of those things left over, right? We're still dealing with ancient China. I guess I don't know exactly when that cutoff is for ancient China or however that goes, but
right. Yeah.
Well, because that's also a break too when we start talking about kind of the 80s new wave for Hong Kong cinema. Like that's when Sammo and Jackie would start setting stuff. And I think Bruce Lee did some too, actually.
And that's probably also where you get Chow Yun Fat and the hard boiled stuff. Yeah, John.
Well, yeah, that's even farther. Yeah, the John Woo stuff, you could even say, yeah. Because eventually what happened is that Hong Kong directors weren't getting at least the money or the respect that they, I'm sure, deserved in Hong Kong. So a lot of them started making the trip to Hollywood. John Woo is like the perfect example of that. But yeah, anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
we are kind of square in the middle. Fearless Hyena comes out in 1979. And one of the reasons I went with Fearless Hyena, because I think we talked even a little bit about Snake and the Eagle's Shadow, which was even pre-Drunken Master, the film that Yen Wu-ping and Jackie Chan did together, that kind of both maybe launched the kung fu comedy, which is almost another genre.
Sure.
But we did Drunken Master, and Fearless Hyena actually comes out 4 months after Drunken Master. They were pumping these things out. I mean, that's part of the issue with even making a list of kung fu movies that you want to watch, is there's a literal zillion out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with horror, right? Like I run into that all the
Yeah.
time. It's
Okay.
trying to find something new or that doesn't, that isn't already, been classified as a hit is impossible.
Well, also because I feel like there's so many things to like horror with these kung fu movies that there's a movie that you've never heard about before, but you've seen a gif of it on Twitter or something like that you're like, oh
Right.
man, now I want to watch that whole thing maybe not worth it, or as worth it as that gif you saw, but yeah, so whatever, it's all in the
It's
fun.
still fun. Yeah.
So you could say that Fearless Hyena does fall maybe at the tail end of that transition, since we are even coming after Drunken Master, and we are talking about like the bigger break is probably between something like a Jackie Chan vehicle and something like a Chang Che, who we've talked about when it comes to Five Deadly Venoms. I think we did
Five Deadly Venoms. That was a cool.
But he also did the One-Armed Swordsman that I talked about not too long ago. And we'll come back to him actually, because if we get to a rest of the show, I've got 2 movies that kind of continue some of this story. So Fearless Hyena comes in, I think, pretty strictly speaking, which was one of your other questions, what would you consider Fearless Hyena to be? I think we're still in the kung fu genre here. I don't know if anybody would really call it a wuxia, this one.
Sure.
You're not going to see some of the supernatural stuff in Fearless Hyena. It is going to be more kind of choreography based. It's going to be more kung fu based. Like I said, I would call it more of a kung fu movie, kung fu comedy, maybe even than a wuxia. Some of your other questions also real quick had to do with his normal group of collaborators, you called them. And I think you're either thinking of one of 2 things. Chronologically speaking, you might be thinking of the people he literally went to Peking Opera School with. And he went to the China Drama Academy with Sammo Hung, Yuan Bao, who we did Righting Wrongs, right? And Kuo Yuen, who I think directed Righting Wrongs, right? Among other things.
I think so.
Yeah. But he went to school with those guys, and that's kind of one of the famous groups that came out of that. So I don't know if maybe you were thinking of that. They call themselves I think they were part of a specific troupe called the Seven Little Fortunes. There's actually a movie called Painted Faces from '88 that has to do strictly with that and them that I haven't watched yet. So either you're thinking of that, or you are literally thinking of Jackie Chan's stunt team, which most of the time is called the Jackie Chan stunt team, maybe.
That's what I was. Okay. That's what I was thinking of. Although to be fair, the question was actually based off of the idea of the first thing that you said. Where because Beth is the one who kind of, she was like, doesn't he work with like the same people he went to school with or something? So it was a combination of the 2, but I was definitely thinking of the stunt team in particular.
Okay, yeah. So they are definitely 2 separate teams, because what happened is Jackie Chan formed his stunt team, it was before Fearless Hyena, even though there are different iterations of it. Obviously, it was kind of a looser group of people.
Right.
And then it became more formalized. Like, they even got health insurance and stuff like that. Like, it literally became an incorporation, or however you want to call that.
Right. And I mean, the only reason I even know about it is because you mentioned it maybe last year. We talked about it with something where it was like, oh yeah, these are all the guys that he worked with on that movie and that and that.
Well, that's what it becomes part of what makes his movies, right? Is because they have such familiarity with each other, and
but they're not going into complex choreography cold, where they've either never done it. They don't know how the other person does things. They don't know their speed.
Right.
So this is all that familiarity for sure helps with that, with the choreography, the action moments,
right? Or to some extent they can go in cold is what ends up happening. And with Fearless Hyena, I wondered about this because it does get so technical, like any Chan movie or whatever,
dude.
But I did wonder to some extent how much was it worked out on the set because it is so tight. Like, how many times have I watched a movie that I'm like, wow, this must have been choreographed to death? And it was really, they showed up. Because there are movies where, yeah, they showed up and pretty much figured it out there on the spot.
Right,
So
right.
it's insanity to even try and think of it. And I don't know the answer when it comes to Fearless Hyena.
Fair enough.
But yeah, eventually with the stunt team, what happened was that I guess the official incarnation disbanded somewhere around 1990, and everybody kind of became independent contractors. There was still a team, and obviously they're going to work with each other, but I guess the organization was somewhat different. And something we actually didn't talk about when it came to Shang-Chi is that Brad Allen was the first non-Chinese guy to make the team, ended up heading up a significant part of the team, and ended up doing the choreography and action stuff for Shang-Chi, and then died before the movie even came out. It's kind of a crazy story.
We did talk about that, actually.
Okay.
We did.
Cool.
But I think we talked about it during Shang-Chi, not during Julykwondo.
So just every now and then I'll just bring it up like we didn't talk about it again to make up for having already talked about.
You got to remind people. Yeah.
about Brad Allen. You do. That's actually a fun story, or a bummer of an ending.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love how that story ends.
Oh boy. Fearless Hyena, aka Revenge of the Dragon, because even Jackie couldn't escape. Well, actually, okay, there's some history there too when we get to the sequels of Fearless Hyena, but Jackie was also victim of the whole Bruceploitation wave that happened after his death. So yeah, this movie was also called Revenge of the Dragon in some markets, also called Super Fighter 3 in other markets, and The Shadow Man in yet other markets.
How disappointing is this movie to anybody picking up those titles? Like, they're like, this is not what Shadow Man, and he's being a goofball?
And strangely enough, Super Fighter 3 is probably the best one out of those, because it doesn't have anything to do with, it's not the Bruceploitation title. It doesn't have anything to do with hyenas or shadows. So yeah, we're going to stick with Fearless Hyena for the time being. So to actually talk about Fearless Hyena, Matt, I like you, had never seen it before. It's just been on the list. Obviously heard about it like most of the movies on my list now. So we're coming at this from the same direction. Mm-hmm. What did you think by the time you were done with it?
Well, I thought it was called The Fearless Hyena, and it came at you an hour and 38 minutes, written by Jackie Chan and Wai Lo, directed by Jackie Chan, starring Jackie Chan, James Chen, Dean Shek, Hui Lu Chen, Kun Li, Chen Chi Chang. Here is your book club for movie synopsis for The Fearless Hyena. A unique martial artist begins showing off his skills only to draw the attention of his master's mortal enemy. To answer your question, how did I feel about this movie? Maybe, honestly, my favorite Jackie Chan thing I've ever seen.
Oh, cool.
Nice. I love Drunken Master. Drunken Master is great. I love Rumble in the Bronx. All that Police Story is super fun. But this was just different than all of those in a way that I was totally not expecting. I loved that throughout the movie, there were little bits and pieces of things that he had done in Drunken Master. We got a little of the Drunken Master maneuver, like some of those moves. There was some of the stuff you'd see way later on in things like what's the one with all right, Shanghai Nights and Shanghai Noon. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Some of the great stuff that he does there, we get like early iterations of it here. The story is super silly and fun, but it fits the style. Like, everything about the movie comes together so well. And when the varying characters are introduced that he has to fight or deal with or whatever, just perfect. And the villain, like, come on. It's like, I swear there's one guy that was just always looking like that. He always they're always like, yeah, we need that dude with the long white hair and the long white beard, that whole long thing. Yeah, call him every time. But it was so good, man. And the thing that really got me though was how technical, like, the choreography was here. I honestly am, and maybe it's because I haven't seen it in a while, but I feel like the choreography and the work here is stronger than Drunken Master. It's a different thing, but it's so, like, it's a different kind of fluid, a different kind of there's like a different kind of pop to it, and it definitely seems like there was I can imagine watching the evolution of this and getting to this movie, or the evolution of Jackie Chan, and getting to this movie and go, okay, he really has a handle on what he wants to do. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, his directorial debut, right?
Yeah, that was the other thing I was getting to. Also, why I thought it was kind of a better pick than going back to Snake and the Eagle's Shadow or something like that was that, this is the first movie he directed, which I'm sure is kind of a fuzzy area to some extent when it comes to his team and all that. But yeah, supposedly he's the dude behind the camera for most, if not all, of this movie.
That's great. I mean, it however this movie came about, just loved it. Yeah, I huge fan. Beth and I watched it together. We were both just laughing and smiling the whole way through, and all of that choreography, man. There were so many jaw-dropping, like that was so cool moments of just pure, like, they're not going slow. They didn't speed the film up. Those guys are just going, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know, because that was another common trick, is that they would often film at 22 frames and run it at 24, and it would be just slightly sped up enough, but not so much that it looked too fake, even though I think we'll get to some noticeable examples of that this month. But it doesn't look like that's the case with this stuff. I think, in fact, with most of Jackie Chan's stuff, I get the feeling that he didn't use that 22 frames thing all that often.
Yeah. It always, his fight scenes always felt a little more, I guess, organic than a bunch of those other kung fu fights that you see where it's like, I mean, there are just, I don't know, maybe it's because some of them you can tell so badly, but I don't know. It looks great though.
Yeah, it does feel like a complete package, which I think is part of the draw of Jackie Chan directing his own stuff, which, by the way, isn't that common. Like, he's done that 18 times for the 200 plus movies he's been a part of. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, it does feel like a complete package in that way, that he is the one deciding what's going to look the best. And he does have that style, like, which is that pull back and just show what he can do, essentially, not a lot of cuts. There's, in fact, for this movie especially, I think maybe even more so than Drunken Master, the takes are so long, like, dude. There's so many moves that he's memorized and choreographed that go on for so long. And it's all mixed, there's a rhythm. It's not just one long take after one long take, but the long takes feel longer than I even remember seeing from Drunken Master.
Well, and I think what works for them too is because they're so organic and kinetic that they don't feel long. But when you stop and think, this is the equivalent, right, of a Shakespearean actor memorizing his 5-page monologue and all the little things and getting it and nailing it, right? Like going out and doing it, because that's what it is. Like
it's true, man. Yeah, it's Ingrid Bergman in the freaking Orient Express, right? Just going on for
that's it for an
minutes
hour
at a time. Yeah. It's perfect.
And that is always, that is impressive. Like there are, especially when you consider not only that there is dialogue in these fights, but there's also, again, all of the movement that goes to it, the set that they have to work around, the people they're working around, that the props that they're using, like there's a million things that go into it. And it's when you start breaking that down and, after you've watched this 3.5 minutes, which, maybe not, doesn't seem very long, but when you start getting into minute plus shots, that's a long freaking take.
I would wonder if they do break the minute mark. That feels impossible, but it certainly feels like a full minute worth of,
But but when you start getting up there, and it's not a 5-second, 10-second clip, there's a lot going on there. You got a lot of moving parts, and it's very, very technically impressive.
Yeah.
But and because of that, it shines when you see it on screen.
So since we're talking about the fights, also I might as well get it all out. I think if you're going to look up one fight, because I feel like that's the thing often. Have you seen Fearless Hyena? No, I haven't. Are you going to watch the whole thing? Probably not. Go look up this fight on YouTube. It's the one with Willow Sword, played by
Dude.
Chen Shi Chang,
Willow
where Jackie
Sword.
has a staff. And they're just, some of that stuff is nuts. The way they kick that thing around. Samo does a bunch of this stuff too, but the way it moves around their body is impossible sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, man. It's crazy. Like it does. It seems like they have some. They're Magneto, man. That thing is metal, and they're just whatever.
Seen Ian McKellen out there just. Where's Ian McKellen's taken? That's what I want to know.
Ian McKellen swinging things around. We are the future, Charles, not them.
But honestly, you probably couldn't go wrong with just about any of the other fights in the film. It's kind of like two movies in one. Okay, we'll continue to talk about the fights by also talking about the other stuff in the movies. But it's kind of two different movies in one, in that the first half deals with Jackie. He's being trained by his grandfather. His grandfather's trying to instill in him respectable kung fu beliefs and whatnot.
Yeah, and have integrity.
Yeah, and he ends up not doing that by allying himself with... First of all, he displays his proficiency regardless, or the character does. There is some action up front that we get the idea that he knows his stuff pretty darn. He's above average already.
Right.
And this also leads to him getting picked up by this group of stooges, essentially. And they create their own school.
The one guy who talks like this always makes me laugh. What are we going to do?
And he becomes the headmaster of the school, but it's all a scam. Like people will come in to challenge, and they'll charge a fee for either challenging or being taught some quick lesson or something like that. And then Jackie will come out and do his thing, but he'll also do it in different ways. The first time he plays the janitor and still mops up the floor, right?
He dresses up. It's so good.
Second time he's actually I don't remember in what order.
One of them he's like a vagrant.
Yes.
He's like a drunken vagrant because that's when he does the drunken master stuff.
Yes. And then the other, he's a woman, so he does a lot of. So basically what I'm getting at is the first half of the film is largely still a kung fu comedy. Like there's some decent fart fu in there also, which I don't know if anybody actually calls it that, but he does.
Please don't.
Literally work that in and fart on somebody as part of the choreography. And so he continues on with these stooges, which I call because I'm pretty sure there's some actual stooge shtick in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Feels like it, for sure. Because
it doesn't feel like it's outside of the realm of possibility. Like it's
right.
Exactly what they're doing, what they're going for, and it's great. But the at one point a quote unquote notorious sex pest shows up. Did you get that one? You were doing subtitles, right? I don't know.
I did not do the subtitles.
Did you do English? Oh, okay, interesting.
I did. I wish I had done subtitles.
Did they call him a notorious sex pest in English?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, they did in the subtitles, but that's the guy he fights as the woman. It's good comedy, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. Is that the first half of the movie is good kung fu comedy. It's funny. It still plays. I'm still into it. It's still very good. The last half of the movie basically turns on his grandfather getting murdered, which is a serious event, and I think pretty much turns the movie fairly serious from then on out.
It's as soon as the grandfather dies, which, by the way, I want to point out, I want to say kudos for the way that was done, and Jackie is acting there.
Yeah,
really
I
good.
Bought it, man. Yeah,
really good, man. Really good. And then the way he goes after the villain, I loved it. Yeah, it was great. But yeah, you're right. The movie does kind of. I don't know that it turns quite on a dime, but it gets
not completely.
It's got a little bit of a tilt to it for sure. But it does definitely focus more on, this is at the point where we're getting the Rocky IV montage where he's which also, by the way, we're watching this montage and and Beth and I are both sitting there going, Jackie is jacked.
Yes,
They
he's
should call him
Jack D.
Jack D
Mhm, yeah.
Chan because holy crap. That dude was tore up back then, man. He was cut. Looking good. But that whole montage sequence, really cool. So much fun. Like, love seeing all the different things that he's doing there. And then then it leads into the kind of the final, the finale against the villain and his group of friends. And there's some humor maintained for sure, but it definitely
Yeah.
loses. Like, it's no longer trying to be as funny as it was. It's now
No, and I think it works. I think it for the
Yeah.
turn that it does take, it totally works. Essentially, Jackie tries to take revenge pretty quickly because it's also his fault. He named the school, I forget, their fake school. He named it with their actual family name, I think is what it was.
Yeah,
Or
it was
something like that. And his grandfather was actually in hiding from this dude that's been walking around, the white bearded guy. And so he's able to find his grandfather because of that. So it's kind of Jackie's fault. He tries to take revenge immediately, but his kung fu isn't up to it. So yeah, we get the montage sequence. We also get, I think, the first example, at least for me. In fact, I've already said there are so many of these movies, so every time I say it's a first example of something, I'm probably wrong. But for my list and the movies I'm going through, it's also one of the first examples of kind of that small kung fu that they'll do often with the chopstick battle there.
That was so cool.
Yeah.
Which
is basically just, it breaks down the kung fu to like the kind of push-pull elements completely, and they're just going through with, all these small movements, or even just not necessarily kung fu movements, but how it plays off the body. This still happens. I don't know if I talked about the scene specifically, but if you watch even the trailer for Master Z, which is not an Ip Man knockoff, I feel like probably didn't get the respect it deserved for kind of being a tangent movie. It's totally worth it. Totally cool.
Who's in that one?
Go check it out. But in that trailer, you can see
who stars in that one.
Max Zhao. It comes from, I think, Ip Man 2. Donnie Yen faces off against Max Zhao from a rival school or something like that. You'd recognize him if you saw him.
Sure.
This movie is kind of his redemption arc, like how although I think he's redeemed a bit in that movie anyways. He's not complete bad guy. But yeah, anyway, Master Z, great movie. Watch the trailer. You can see Michelle Yeoh and him doing a bit of that small kung fu where they're doing it with like a whiskey glass, some of that. But they do that in here. First example I've seen of it. Probably isn't the first one that exists, but is an excellent example of it nonetheless.
So good. That was one we actually rewound because Beth got up and I think she left the room, and I was like, nope, you got to see this.
Yeah, it's great. So the last half of the movie, I feel like, is more that. It's more training. It's more getting buff. It's more montage. It's a little bit more serious before.
Also, the fights are the choreography for the fights have now become more serious too. Because the stakes have raised, they're changed. So the kind of quote unquote fun that we were seeing before isn't exactly on display, but we're still seeing elements of all of those things that he was doing previously show up here, but in a less goofy manner. And
yeah, well, Jackie Chan's character holds true. And when I say Jackie Chan's character, I mean the one that he always talks about in those interviews where he's like, I saw Bruce, I wanted to be Bruce, but instead of punching and doing the wah, I would punch and shake my fist like, ow, like he's still that Jackie Chan for the rest of the movie. That's still the character that we're getting. But I think
but the slapstick is just toned down so slightly.
It follows. It's smartly serious after that. I'd
say. And it's good too, because it still shows that range that he's got, man. Like he shows a ton of range in this movie, and it's again, I think we've probably said this forever, as long as we can remember. Jackie Chan is an incredibly impressive martial artist, like and on the screen,
agree.
That's it. That's all. That's the end.
It's a good movie. I honestly don't have a ton more. Just that I think it all works as a complete package, both as a director, as an action director, as an action actor. It comes together in the way that you would hope If you heard
Totally.
that, oh, Jackie Chan directed an early Jackie Chan movie, yeah, it's that, and I don't think we're alone. The movie hit, like, it was a big hit. It made a cool $3 million.
Yeah, which
to,
and it only cost 25,000.
yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
sure.
say I don't have the budget, but I'm guessing it was well under that technically. So, anything else on Fearless before I tell you what happened?
No, man. I really enjoyed it. It was such a fun movie. I'm really glad I caught that one. That's one I will rewatch for sure, and will recommend to other people that are fools and don't watch the podcast.
Yeah, easy 9 stars.
Yeah, out of 10.
Perfect. So it did hit. It did make that money, and it did engender 2, technically 0 sequels. And what happened was that during the sequel, apparently Chan broke contract and went to Golden Harvest, which he would have a long relationship with.
Different production company.
Yeah, because the one, the Low Way Pictures, I think was the actual title or something like that. It was Low Way was the guy that was doing it. And he's an amazing story all on his own. He's rumored to have had ties with the triads and all this stuff. So Jackie breaks contract to go to Golden Harvest. Apparently, Low Way, according to Wikipedia, blackmailed him with the triads. But then Jimmy Wang Yu steps in, who is, if you've watched enough of the 60s, even 70s stuff, was in a bunch of them. He is the one-armed swordsman. He steps in for whatever reason and is able to come to an agreement so that Chan doesn't have to return, but Lo Wei finishes Fearless Hyena 2 himself using doubles, and alternate and reused footage from the first movie.
Cool.
And apparently it was so bad that Chan then sued to keep it from being released, but lost, and it is, in fact, out there. Fearless Hyena 3 is insanity made manifest. I can't even find enough about it existing online. It stars somebody called Jackie Chen.
This is definitely a porn version.
I don't know, because I honestly can't. I don't know if I'm even going to find the movie itself, but that is the sad fate of the Fearless Hyena franchise.
That is good trivia, though.
Yeah. So if you're into Fearless Hyenas, check out the first 1,000,000%. Maybe not the second or third, depending. I'll probably still watch them, honestly, if I'm being honest. That seems like something I got to see. So
These are Mortal Kombat Armageddon or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Annihilation. That's fine.
God, why? I'm so glad I don't remember that, but I also am annoyed that I don't remember it. You know,
I think it's better that you don't. I think you come out ahead when I correct you. So let's not. I mean, it's fine.
Fair enough.
Matt.
Yeah.
Next week, you already know what we're gonna do.
I do. I don't remember what it's called.
Okay, good. So I gave it to you because I didn't know. I've been out of town. I'm back. Whatever. We didn't know what our recording schedule was going to be like. So I told you ahead of time. You don't know what 3 and 4 are going to. Actually, you already guessed what 4 is going to be, but nobody at home knows. So
homers.
We're going to do the Blonde Fury.
That's right. The Blonde Fury.
AKA female reporter.
Female reporter.
Yeah. IMDb has that as that. That's the U.S. title. Or Lady Reporter actually was another. I don't know why they switched that one. If you're from West Germany, it might be called Born to Fight. And if you're from the UK, it's called Above the Law 2, which only makes sense to you if you came here last year for Righting Wrongs, which was called Above the Law in some markets, but I'm guessing they changed because of Mr. Seagal. We'll just call him.
Yeah. All I care about is that we're watching more Cynthia Rothrock.
Yes.
And that really brings me the joy.
Well, not only Cynthia Rothrock, you'll see a few recurring faces from Righting Wrongs. So
I love it.
There is a reason why they actually called it Above the Law 2 in some markets. But yes. And one of the reasons I did tell you we were doing this already is because I knew I'd have to give it to you. So viewers at home, if you're looking for a way to watch this thing, good luck. It took me months to find it. And yes, I did find it
Where?
how would you put that? Where elsewhere? So
You found it at the Internet Library.
Yes, and it wasn't even that easy. So if you're looking to also watch the film, I do wish you all the luck in the world. You can buy the DVD. That's the thing, is this thing never got an HD re-release, or however that goes. Never got a Blu-ray, even a cheapo for the bargain bins.
Sure.
So the actual DVD, because it did come out on DVD enough, standard definition DVD, is in the hundreds, whereabouts you can find it. Yeah, so
if anybody wants to watch it, hit us up, and we'll just have a little watch party, and you can engage.
Yeah, I wonder if enough of the rights still exist for anybody to care about that. That would be interesting. Either way, we're going to watch it. I've already watched it twice, I'll be honest. And not because I knew about it beforehand. I have since watched it twice after I gave it to you. So
I love it.
You're going to, I think, love it. Yes. But
I'm excited
we'll
about it. Yeah.
find out for sure next week. So come back for Blonde Fury. I'm going to keep calling it that because I do think that's probably the best title out of the bunch. But
it's better than Female Reporter.
So come back for that. Matt, I think we do still have time. I don't know what the edit of the first half of this podcast ended up being, but I think we've still got time to talk about some rest of the show picks. I have 2, and I'm going to keep it action oriented. I'm going to try and do all of my rest of the shows from that list on Letterboxd. Yeah, I know.
You're crazy.
Roll eyes.
You're some kind of crazy person over here.
But do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I do. I got a couple. Did I talk to you about Masterminds yet on the show at all?
Doesn't ring a bell, but I often forget the titles.
Yeah, so this is one that I caught on Netflix, directed by Jared Hess, stars Galifianakis, Kristen Wiig, Owen Wilson, Jason Sudeikis, Mary Elizabeth Ellis, Kate McKinnon has some bits in it. Basically, every single funny person that you can think of that's been an SNL cast member or around one is in this somewhere. The movie came out in 2016, and I remember it coming out, and I remember seeing it and going, oh, that looks like it could be funny. And then I just never watched it. It just didn't happen. And
one of those happens. Yeah.
One of those. And it just so happened that as I was flipping through stuff to look for on Netflix, popped up, and I went, you know what? This is perfect. I'm going to check this out. And it's a really interesting movie that is very funny, based on a true story of one of the largest bank heists in American history that occurred in 1997. And Galifianakis and Kristen Wiig play 2 security guards that are they work for Loomis Fargo, which is different than Wells Fargo, and Loomis Fargo barely. Yeah, it's barely.
I don't know what kind of a joke that was. Sorry,
but I don't either. But in any case, they're working together, and at some point, it turns into this. Well, what if we rob things and people get involved? And Sudeikis is not in the movie as much as I'd like, but he steals every moment he's on screen as this hired hitman that in a weird turn of events becomes friends with Zach Galifianakis. And I won't give any more away. Movie is totally worth a watch, dude. It's funny. It's cute. It's got again, the story that it's telling is a real story, and it's like the fact that it's real is outrageous.
All right.
Super fun.
Yeah, I thought I knew all of Jared Hess's movies, actually, and I had never heard of that before. But also, I think didn't look anything up after Gentlemen Broncos, which sounds bad, but I also kind of liked. Though. Yeah, so I'm curious, better or worse? Because Gentlemen Broncos, I would also describe in similar terms as an interesting movie. Okay, all right.
So this is so different because this is, so Gentlemen Broncos, I love because it is kind of absurdist comedy, in so many ways. This isn't that. This is more of a straight, like, we're telling a crime story, but we're telling it in a lighter way, because the people that were actually involved were not crime bosses. He was a guy that was just a kind of a goober that drove a security truck. That's it. Like, and how it all falls together Like, and then you read what really happened and you're like, okay, so this movie is, yeah, it's far off, but not that far off, you know?
Interesting. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, there's no chance I'm not going to watch it. So
You got, yeah,
I'll
check it.
out.
It's worth it. Totally worth
both
it.
of mine, and I'll just do them in a row since it's kind of a continuation of what we've been
Wait,
talking about.
wait, yes. Okay, so you want me to finish this then?
Oh, do you have a second? Do you
I
want
got
to go
one
2 in a row?
more.
Oh, okay.
I got
yeah,
one
you go.
more.
I was doing
wait.
the fake volleyball thing. I don't know.
Okay, we can do that. I just
no,
wanna,
I don't want to anymore.
I just don't want you to know. I just don't want you to forget that I had another. That I, wanted to
I would
just
never
mention.
forget that one, and also just go ahead.
Are you familiar with Tony Wilson? Do you know who Tony Wilson was?
Tony Wilson. Am I familiar with Tony Wilson?
Let me
tell
ask you.
Matt.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Wait, I'm stalling while I look it up on IMDb.
You familiar with New Order?
Oh yeah, sure. The
Familiar
band, I
with-
would imagine.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're familiar with New Order? Familiar with? Are you familiar with the Happy Mondays?
Sounds familiar.
So there is a fantastic movie called 24-Hour Party People.
Heard of it also.
Came out in, let's see, what is it, 2005 or something, 2002. Part of the reason this movie works so well is the way it was actually filmed. So it's grainy as all hell. It almost looks like it was filmed on video, but it works because it stars Steve Coogan as Tony Wilson, who is the guy that basically set up Manchester as a haven for alternative and punk music by creating Factory Records. So Factory Records would go on to the Joy Division, which would become New Order, Certain Ratio, the Happy Mondays. James would eventually be on there, OMD. So not by any means small bands. And the story is told in a great way. It does kind of. There's a little bit of a focus on Joy Division and New Order because the death of the lead singer of Joy Division, whose name I'm blanking on right now, Ian Curtis. Is that right? That's not right.
The lead singer of Joy Division. Oh, that.
It was Ian Curtis. Yeah.
It's just gonna be me stalling while I look things up. Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So there's kind of an underlying story being told about how New Order became New Order and how and how they ended up kind of being Factory Records, probably their biggest band.
Sure.
But the movie is it is about Manchester and Factory Records and Tony Wilson, how he's dealing with trying to set up music, setting up concert venues, doing all this stuff. And the way it's filmed, like I said, it feels it was 2002, but it's very lo-fi, and it works really well because it's one of those movies where they do where Steve Coogan plays Tony Wilson. Coogan breaks the fourth wall to tell, to give us
Cool.
the story, so there are these great moments where we'll be in the middle of a thing occurring, and then he'll just kind of look at the camera and he'll say, this is what happened next. 2 years from now, he would kill himself. And that's going to be the biggest, thing that happens. And then they move to the next bit and it goes on. And it's a movie I hadn't seen in forever. I hadn't seen it in...
It's the movie is 24-Hour Party People. That's the one you're talking about.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. And it's great. If you're interested, if you like any of those bands, if you like a lot of the British new wave punk stuff, and you haven't seen this, seek it out. It's out there. It's a great movie. It tells a cool story. It tells a tragic story in some ways. Takes place again in 76, 77 time period, and kind of goes up from there till
Sure.
the mid 80s, I think. Super great movie, man. And you and I have talked about this before. I think number one, you already know, and any viewer of the show probably knows, I love musicals, but I also really like movies about bands and about like huge fan of stuff like this. And we're actually, for the next TVVB, I'll be talking about Pistol a little bit, the Sex Pistols TV show by Danny Boyle.
Looking forward to that. Okay. Because Johnny Rotten has already come out against it pretty.
Johnny Rotten is an idiot. Let's just be real clear. That guy is a putz. I mean, the movie does him no favors because he was a putz then. He's a putz now. Johnny Rotten.
Looking forward to it.
Johnny Rotten and PIL. For as much as I love PIL, he is just a pile in
it works.
Lubrication.
Or it doesn't.
I don't know.
Before I forget, you reminded me, I'm halfway through a YouTube. It's not a YouTube documentary. In fact, I think it's from, if I had to guess, British TV. It's hard to source because a lot of times this gets posted without the official title. And if it's made for TV anyways, it's hard to look up. But it's called History of Punk, Sound of Rebellion. And then it's got the obligatory full documentary tag, and then says amplified for some reason. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Oh, that might be the channel. Yes, that's the channel. It's on the channel Amplified Music and Pop Culture Documentaries. I'm being very specific about it because it is fantastic. There is 0.000 chance you don't enjoy this and some of the history it goes through. It starts out...
What's it called? History of Punk what?
Let me go back. History of Punk, Sound of Rebellion. I'm sure that'll get you there. I'm just halfway through it, but it is phenomenal. Like,
and it's on YouTube?
Yes. Yeah, it's just YouTube, straight up.
Cool.
It's playing to me, it's literally, and I came in, fourth, fifth wave punk. I don't know what you want to call it, but even in California, some people just call it surf punk. But you do the work and you go back, that's what I always found interesting and fun about punk rock, is that you go back. You never, there's not, unfortunately, you don't listen to a lot of current punk bands, or you do, but it's different. But you go back. So yeah, all of the stories this tells, it starts out in the States and does make its way to the UK, and New Order is mentioned. This would fit perfectly with some of what you're talking about, because it basically tells you what that band was born out of. Yeah, what New Wave was kind of born out of, even though I think New Wave was the US moniker.
Ooh.
I forget what they called it in the UK, but there's so many other things too. There's the no wave movement. I don't know if you got into any of those. With
sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
anyway, yeah.
No, but I love that stuff, and
it's great, dude. Check it out. There's no chance. You and Beth, you'll
because she's a huge punk fan. So it's funny watching movies like this with her, because they get to a point. Same thing with Pistol. They get to a point where she was very aware of what was going on. Like she was alive at the time.
Yeah.
So she was like, she may have been in Manchester, but 24-hour party, people. Super great.
Okay.
If you are unfamiliar for some reason with Joy Division though, dude, go get Joy Division. Go listen to
it is actually one of my, and they're featured pretty prominently. I guess what happened, little spoiler for that documentary, is that there was a Sex Pistols concert, or Devoto from Buzzcocks called, was it McLaren? I think he called the Sex Pistols manager or whoever it was and was like, hey, you want to do a show down in, and I forgot the where. I need to watch the whole thing again.
It was, what's funny is I bet it was.
Did they mention it in Party People also?
Okay. Yeah, because it's a huge part of it is where the Sex Pistols. So Tony thought that the moment the Sex Pistols played at this one specific place, that it should have been it should be considered a seminal moment in rock.
That's got to be, because they're basically the members of Joy Division, New Order. Yeah, there was 5 different bands. In fact, they make a joke. They're like, apparently everybody that was at that concert went out and started a band. So yeah, check it out.
And that actually does come up in Pistol as well.
Oh, cool. Interesting. Yeah, looking forward to talk about that. We should do our TVVB sooner than later, actually. I think I might have enough to fill it up too. All right. My two movies, going back a little bit to the Kung Fu stuff.
Yeah.
First was, I might have mentioned I was watching this, the Five Fingers of Death.
Yes.
Which is, I think, one you'll hear about most often as launching the Kung Fu boom when Warner Brothers released it in the States in March of '73.
It's a popular one.
And I'm happy to report with reason, actually. It's been some of the pleasant surprises. The next one is going to be the same thing. It's a one that you hear about a lot. But I've always been curious if they're going to hold up or if it's just one that was latched onto for who knows why. But no, this is above. If you've heard me talk about some of the ones I've watched already, this is, I think, up there, if not second or first, in my estimation. It seems like everything's probably coming to, which is strange to say if it's the one also that's launching the Kung Fu boom, that it's a great example of it. It just goes to show that it was going on well before, or, percolating well before in actual China. But it's got that 70s music. It's got the 70s music hook even when he does. In fact,
baby.
This is some of what we were just talking about when it comes to the wuxia and some of the supernatural elements. Some of those are hanging around in this. It's still ancient China. It's kind of doing the thing with warring schools.
It's
Kung
the
Fu.
schools, right? Yeah.
But the dude, the Five Fingers of Death, has like they'll turn red, and it's all like the effects they use. I think they're just using gel lights and various things like that. In fact,
sure, absolutely.
And when one of the guys dies, they'll gel light him green for a bit. It's beautiful. It's so fun to watch. Yeah. But that is, I would say, hanging around from the wuxia stuff, some of that supernatural element, because they don't overdo it here either. It's not like something he's not like throwing Ryukins
fireballs. Right.
Yeah. But it does still have a little bit of that in there. It also does the thing where it sets up the Japanese as kind of the warring school of thought, and they do gain their independence, quote unquote, from these particular Japanese by killing them a whole bunch. Well, actually, not a whole bunch. That's not true. That undersells it. For as nuanced as this movie is, which is, again, one of the other surprises, like, I was very, very surprised and taken with Five Fingers of Kung Fu, for as popular and as often as I feel like you hear about it.
It's a good one.
You seen it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Worth it.
Yeah, that one was on TV frequently when I was a kid.
Oh, okay. That's so cool. I wish I would have caught it like at that time period.
Yeah, it was totally one of those, like, that one was on pretty frequently along with, the Bruce Lee ones and Zatoichi and
okay.
I'm trying to, there was one or two. Yojimbo was on pretty regularly.
Yeah. Man, cool. Yeah, it's very, very, very good and very, very representative. In fact, I would say if you're moving down the list, you want a wuxia, it's Touch of Zen. If you want a Kung Fu from this time period, from, I want to say 60s, but it's obviously we're into the 70s now.
Really?
It's this. It's 5 fingers. Yeah, 70. I think Hong Kong 72. Yeah, US 73. So
sure.
This is that.
Yeah.
If you're gonna watch two movies, start out with those two, I guess, or whatever. The other one is the 36th Chamber of Shaolin.
Shaolin. Yeah.
Which you've probably also seen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's another big one. Which
great.
I mentioned Cheng Che already, and he was the guy that did One Armed Swordsman, Five Deadly Venoms. His choreographer was Lau Kar Lung, who ended up directing 36th Chamber and a whole bunch of others. But basically, if you want to know what like the premier choreographer, because Chang and Liu are basically the two that people talk about, especially when it comes to Shaw Brothers, as really spearheading the Kung Fu boom. And man, if you think Chang's stuff is cool and you want to see what it looks like when a choreographer makes a movie, like you could not get any better than 36th Chamber. It is so
cool,
fantastic, and it's perfectly made. Like if you hope that when that happens, there is this kind of perfect marriage of direction and editing and choreography. It is like it totally happens in the 36th Chamber. Yeah.
I haven't seen that in a long, long time.
Check it out again, especially if you're going through some of these, especially after watching some Jackie Chan, which is actually funny because this is also coming out
78.
Yeah, 78. So pretty late. So Chan also had Drunken Master, Fearless Hyena was 79. So it's kind of coming out at the same time. So you really have Bruce Lee, who is like the cinematic, like it doesn't get any better than Bruce Lee cinematically speaking, and Jackie Chan, who it doesn't get any better technically speaking, like when it comes to actual kung fu, the
choreography and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
So 36th Chamber comes out and doesn't necessarily have either of those, even though Gordon Liu is fantastic. Like he's a force all on his own. Like I will gladly watch stuff that he's in, which I feel like he collaborated a few more. Well, at the very least in the sequels, there are 2 more sequels to 36th Chamber.
I've only seen Return. I think it's called Return.
Return, and then
Chamber.
Disciples of is the 3rd one, I believe. Yeah.
Never seen that one.
Yeah. I'm
wonder if it's
going to watch them. But yeah, so to have this come out kind of in between those and still compete is pretty amazing. Like the Kung Fu is definitely the best non-Jackie Chan stuff. Like there's so much weapon work. And I mean, it's hard not to mention the premise, which is so instantly like you want to see it. You know, and it's this idea that it's during the Tartar invasion, right? So the invading force comes in and basically kills everybody involved with this student and his teacher, not Kung Fu student. He's just going to school. The teacher is an activist and, you know, is rebelling in some way. So they kill everybody. He escapes to a temple of Shaolin where there's a bunch of Shaolin monks. I think this might even be where that trope, if it didn't come from this, well, it comes from history, number one. But if it didn't, like cinematically speaking, come from this, you know, it was perfected here. And goes through 36 chambers where he learned different aspects of Kung Fu.
Sure.
But it's so compelling because they're not only are they things that I could see like kids or even people taking home and being like, I could do that. Like I could make this part of my regimen for no reason other than to make my wrists really strong. I don't know why I chose that
sure.
But all of those examples are so compelling, along with the whole idea of going through the different chambers to develop your Kung Fu.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's perfect, man. And then to get to, I struggle with spoiling what the 36th chamber is, but it's also so good.
It is yourself.
Okay, very good. In fact, that's good. That doesn't tell the whole story, but it tells enough of it that I love it. It is what that ends up being is super cool. And how, because the movie takes place over the course of, I want to say like, is it 20 years?
It's a long
seems
time.
Like too long. It's a long time.
It's
like,
a
he doesn't
long
just
time, though.
go and like he's a phenomenal student.
Yeah, this is not a Marvel movie where he learns it in 2 hours.
Well, I mean, in real time he does, but also
Yes.
I forget. This is the first time. No, okay. Again, I don't know if it's the first time, but it's the first example I've come across of essentially doing the Ip Man thing. Like Ip Man to me, which I kind of watched out of order chronologically, it was always strange because it took a historical figure and made this crazy set of movies that certainly couldn't be that true, but it was such a blast to watch and all this. This does that. Like San Te is an actual person from history, a legendary Shaolin martial arts disciple. And this tells a highly fictionalized version of that story, but that is where it's getting that. And which actually, I guess it might be doing the Wong Fei Hung thing more accurately. That he was probably the first figure who was Jackie Chan's character from Drunken Master, but there's been a ton of movies about the historical folklore or whatever, however you want to put that. For Wong Fei Hung. 36th Chamber is a fantastic movie. It's so good, man. So good.
I love it. Love it. I do have to take umbrage with one thing you said, though.
Okay, cool. Love it.
You went and you made a pretty glorious statement there about how the movie may have perfected the entire concept of the like Shaolin monk thing.
Okay.
Mortal Kombat did that. Too much television.
Right. I'm sorry.
Rotting his brain.
The Five Fingers, actually, there's a tournament there as well. And I did remark in Mortal Kombat fashion, I was like, man, adding a tournament to a plot just automatically makes it more compelling.
It's enhanced. It enhanced. That is like plot enrichment. That's what that is.
Yep. Like did you ever watch Tekken?
No, but I will, because
I probably will watch it again even, but yeah, not a whole lot to say about that film, but there's a tournament that takes place. So
look,
it's just
the movie Sidekicks with Jonathan Brandis, Chuck Norris, and Joe Piscopo?
Oh,
terrible movie.
We've talked about it before, I know, because I always think about the TV show Sidekicks,
right?
Which I might have to watch again.
Also better. Still will watch it because the entire movie predicated on a tournament. So you give me a tournament, I'm in. The Wizard, that movie is amazing because
Another
there's a
great
tournament.
example. Yeah, the kung fu is fantastic.
Take the tournament out, and I don't care. Now, to be fair, if The Wizard was about a tournament and then he went to the tournament and it was like the All Valley tournament, that would have been better. And then he could have gone back and beaten up the Power Glove kid for being such a jag. Remember, he's like, I get the Power Glove. It's so bad.
It's so bad. Also incredibly bad, Blonde Fury, or The Blonde Fury, or Above the Law 2, or Female Reporter, or...
Yeah, we're not making this up either. We're not just coming up with a random name off the top of our head and saying Female Reporter. It's on the IMDb.
So if you can find it, watch it regardless. We'll be talking about it next week for the second movie of Julykwondo. Matt, thanks for being here.
Ryan,
I don't have an official ending, really. I think it's kind of crazy that I really just don't have an official sign-off for this show.
We never have. Bye!
Nope.